second graders of Lake Orion. My name is Mrs. McMinn and I'm a retired teacher in Lake Orion. I love second graders and I want to say hello to Carpenter Elementary, Orion Oaks Elementary, Weber Elementary, Paint Creek Elementary, Stadium Drive Elementary, and Blanche Sims Elementary. I went to Blanche Sims when I was a little girl, and I love that school. I love you all. Thank you for coming with me for a few minutes and taking a little mini tour of Lake Orion so you can know the history of the town that you live in. First of all, as you can see, we're up on the Bellevue Bridge, and you can see water on both sides of us. And a lot of this lake looks really big, but it was a bunch of little lakes in the 1800s, and we're going to say 1800 a lot. And so almost 200 years Lake Orion was settled. That's a lot of years and a lot's happened. So when the dam was built, it created this part of the lake. So now boats can go under the bridge and we have fireworks. Maybe you've seen those. But I wanted to share a little bit about a man named Jesse Dekker. Maybe you've played ball or soccer at the Jesse Dekker field. Well, he and his wife lived in New York in the 1800s, 1825 about. There's a lot of numbers there, I know. Maybe you can do math with your families after this. And they decided they wanted to move westward. And they ended up in the little town that they named New Canandaigua because they lived in Canandaigua, New York. It means dog town. But this has nothing to do with dogs. They wanted to make a new town. And then after a few years, they called it Lake Orion. And Jesse Dekker was the first one to build a structure, which was a big barn. And do you know who helped him? The Native Americans who lived here, part of the Chippewa tribe. And again, this was back in, let's see, I want to make sure, 195 years ago this happened. So Lake Orion's going to have a 200th birthday when you're in 7th grade. And I hope we really celebrate with that. So the dam was built and created our beautiful lake and your town around it. So we're on the Bellevue Bridge, and behind Mrs. Marsden, by the way, Mrs. Horn and Mrs. Marsden are here, is Bellevue Island. And back in the 1800s, this was very popular because Detroit was very full of people. Lake Orion wasn't. This was called a resort town. We had a railroad track, which was part of the Pollyant Trail, or the trail going through Lake Orion, and there was a train there that would bring people from Detroit, and they would have big church services, they would have resorts, and their families would come and stay in Lake Orion for the summer. So we were kind of a little resort town. Now we're more than a resort town, aren't we? We have our families here and all kinds of wonderful things to do. So Bellevue Bridge, Bellevue Island, the dam was built, and Jesse Dekker had so much to do with that on both sides of our beautiful Lake Orion. Now we're going on to the Orion Veterans Memorial and meet Captain Mestre Mateo. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Captain Joseph Mestre Mateo of the United States Army, and this was his dream many years ago to have this beautiful, beautiful monument and memorial for our veterans in our country. So, Captain Mestre Mateo.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome to all of the Orion Township second graders. It is a real honor for me to be here, and I'm sure you would say the same thing. Come on in and we'll go through the whole memorial and explain some things. Let's start here at our main monument, which we call the Monument of Tears and Joy. And the reason it's named that is because we see the family hugging and loving their son who's off to the war. Now, second graders, please come this way. You'll see the white crosses. They represent all of the soldiers of Orion Township who gave their lives for us and our liberties. Here we have the names of the Civil War soldiers who sacrificed their lives for our freedoms and liberties. And there's 11 of those. Thomas Bowers, Daniel Burton, Roswell Campbell, William A. Churchill, Henry C. Fairchilds, Hiram Hemingway, Harley Roger, Eugene Rose, Charles Soper, Frank Thornley, and Webster Adolphus Marsh. They gave all their tomorrows for our today. Next we have here World War I veterans who once again gave their lives for our freedoms and liberties. Otis Brewster, Newell Thomas Charlton, and Vern E. Poland. They gave all their tomorrows for our today. Here we have World War II, the Orion residents who made the supreme sacrifice for our freedoms and liberties. Laverne Dekker, J.B. Burns, Chester Campbell, Lee Carpenter, Clinton Dekker, Robert Dekker, Edwin Dewey, Roger Feeblehorn, Bernard Kowalk, Erwin Cruz, Marvin Lamphere, Julian Moore, Charles Pettit, Everett Pickering, Anthony Summer, Donald Silva, Alan Swim, Walter F. Walter. They gave all of their tomorrows for our today. Next, we have the Korean War. James Crossman, Charles Daly, Ernest C. Feeblehorn, Edward Wilson Garlick, and Harry Paisley. They gave all their tomorrows for our today. In the Vietnam War, Raymond Welpley and John A. Wood. They gave all their tomorrows for our today. And now we come to the pavilion from which our ceremonies are done, and that represents the Memorial Day ceremony, the 9/11 ceremony, Veterans Day ceremony, and sometimes the Pearl Harbor ceremony, depending on the weather. Here we have a monument in memory of the military personnel buried at sea. Here we have the meditation area, where families like to come, have a seat, and meditate on the memories of members of their family who have been lost in wars. Monument. This was something that originated years ago, but it came to life in the Vietnam War. Without the war dog, we would have lost somewhere, it is estimated, at 10,000 more lives. Next on our tour through the Orion Veterans Memorial is the Benefactors Wall. This represents all of those who gave either money, work, or continuing support to our memorial. As you can see, there are names on these bricks, and they are for veterans only, and their members of their family who also were veterans. Next, we'd like to show you the Victory Garden, which we just have planted. This is a reminder of all of us that during war times, sometimes it's necessary to grow our own food. As we continue our tour, I'd like to tell you about the military branches of service. Up at the top, you'll see medallions that represents the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marines. And over here, we have the Purple Heart Monument, which represents any soldier that was wounded or gave their life. We have the Medal of Honor, which is the highest military award anyone can receive. Orion Township, would you please join me in saluting the flag with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second graders, now we're on the other side of Lake Orion. You can see the boats are coming out and everyone's having fun. And Lake Orion, like we talked about, the train came from Detroit to here to be a resort where people came to spend their summers. Well, one summer in 1894, which was 146 years ago, there were two brothers named John and Tut Lawson, and they were very bored. They were 10 years old, 11 years old. They thought, what can we do to have some fun? Well, this is what they did. They rigged up a little track that went from the shore right over there down into the water. And then they made a dragon. They made it out of whatever, paper mache or whatever they had, paper, and they rigged it so the wheels would be on that track so that dragon could go up and down the track. Well, the first time they did it, right about over there were two little old ladies in the rowboat. And they saw this dragon, and they couldn't paddle back to the shore fast enough. And that was the beginning of our story about our dragon from 146 years ago. And now in Lake Orion, our mascot is the dragon. And that's how we got a dragon right here on Lake Orion. Welcome to Children's Park, everyone. We're in the village of Lake Orion now. It was called a little bedroom town, meaning that you could come from Detroit, get a nice place to stay, and enjoy the country. We're pretty busy now with all the cars and the traffic, but Lake Orion was a teeny town a long time ago. And the reason Jesse Dekker chose this space is because of what you see right here. This is Paint Creek. It runs from Holly all the way down into Orion Township. In fact, Paint Creek Elementary has it in their backyard, and it goes all the way to Rochester. But the reason settlers in the 1800s needed water, I'm just going to pause and you talk to your family about why you think they need water to settle. Hello everyone. We are now on Flint Street in the village. You can see it's a very, very busy street. But back in 1872, it wasn't really that busy. They had horses and they had wagons. They didn't have anything like a car or a truck. So this church is the Lake Orion United Methodist Church. It has a lot of history because this church wasn't always there. It was, Marsden, if you'd like to come and show us all the way down Flint Street, all the way down to the second light, that's where this church stood in 1872. Well, it was right by the railroad track. Can you guess what would happen on a hot summer dry day? The sparks would ignite all of the lawn around the church, and the people who went to church were very nervous about that. So what they did was they got beautiful lumber, which was surrounding Lake Orion, and got the tallest, straightest logs, and they moved this church from way down there all the way here. It was a dirt road. They moved the logs. When one log showed in the back, they'd bring it up to the front. My great-grandfather helped with that, and he was right there too. So this is the church now. In a minute, my sister Janice is going to ring the bell. And when you hear this bell, I want you to think back 146 years ago when this bell rang first. Thank you, Dan. They needed for power. They needed lumber. They needed wheat for bread to turn into flour. And the only way they could do that was to have water power because they didn't have electricity. Over here, Mrs. Marsden, if we look at beyond the playground, those two buildings right there, the far one, the gray one, was Lake Orion's Grist Mill. That's Grist Mill, and that's where, they're right by Paint Creek, we're able to get the power to do their flour. In a minute, we're going to go see Rudd's Mill, which did the lumber besides flour. But you can see the water moving through that little bridge right there. Well, that's because of the dam that was built for Lake Orion. Not only the dam to make the lake bigger, but also to make that water power for Lake Orion. So we're going to walk up and take a look at the dam, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Lake Orion Dam right here. You can see the water flowing and peeking through. You can see the lake level, and it's coming down, and this is why they chose it and built the dam here many, many, many years ago. It's been fixed and it's safe and everything, but this was why they wanted to settle in Lake Orion, because they had the running water. Hello again, everyone. Well, now we're on East Clarkston Road at Kern Road, and we wanted to talk about the Carpenter Rudd Mill. Carpenter students, this was the carpenter who settled here, and his family settled right where your little school is right now. But I wanted to talk about the green signs. I'm sure all of you have seen at least one of these green signs in front of a building. There was one in front of the church. There was one by the dam that I forgot to tell you about. But this tells the history about what stood here and what people used this area for. Let's see if you can listen and hear the sound of the water running. Remember that we talked about how important running water was? Very, very important, because it ran without electricity. It's offered power to the mills. And you can see the Carpenter Rudd Mill stood right here. Let's see, 1825. That's going to be a key number, because when you're in 7th grade, you'll be celebrating the 200th birthday of Lake Orion. And I'm not going to read all these words, but the Carpenter family sold the property right here to the Rudd family. And they decided it was such a wonderful, wonderful place in the middle of people settling that they decided they would make a grist mill here. Remember, a grist mill is one that saws lumber, but it makes flour. And that's what they needed, lumber to build houses. They needed flour to bake bread. But there was also a cooper. You can see they had a general store. They had 3 houses with about 9 rooms in each house, so they were boarding houses. They had a blacksmith shop, horseshoes, and they had a cooper shop. And that is a person who would make the barrels. They would make the barrels to put all the things in. So if you have a chance to come down, take a look at the green sign in Rudd's Mill. Again, this was very important to our young Lake Orion. Hello again. This is our last stop of our historical tour of Lake Orion. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. We're at Friendship Park right now. And of course, if it was a different kind of spring day, it would be packed with ball fields and kids playing on the playground. But it's going to happen soon, kids. It really will. This is the Porat Barn. And the neat thing, when I was a little girl, the Porat family had a dairy. And I thought, what a great name for a family who had dairy cows, the Porat Barn. And there are many Porats who still live in Lake Orion. Well, many years ago, Mrs. Marston just said she remembers, and Mrs. Horn said they remember doing Marathon and donating the money to move this barn. It used to stand at Silver Bell and M24 over by the GM plant. And the children helped in the community, everyone did to move it. And here is the big green historical sign. 1920 is when this barn was built. 1920, 2020. How old is this barn? Did you say 100 years? Well, that's right. You're absolutely right. And then in 2000, 20 years ago, was when they moved the barn over. So this is the Porat Barn. And historically, you can come by when you're driving by to go to the playground. You can go really slow so you can see the Porat Barn. This is the Howard Schoolhouse, and I would like to thank so many students who raised so much money along with the community to move this little schoolhouse, one of Lake Orion's first schoolhouses. They had kindergartners right through seniors, so they did all 13 grades in one little schoolhouse. This schoolhouse stood right near the Porat Barn on Silver Bell, right across M24. And we raised money and we moved it here. What I'm hoping is that we can finish the inside so children like you can come and visit an old-time schoolhouse. And you can see that it used to be a church. It was where a church gathered. And then when they needed to make the church bigger, they moved it as it was like what they call a parsonage, where the pastor of the church lived and had his family. So this is the Howard School. Again, when you come to Friendship Park, go really, really slow. You'll pass the little pond and you'll see Howard School and Porat Dairy. I've had so much fun being with you and your teachers today, but I want to close with one thing. We have learned a lot about the history in the 1800s and how important it is for families to talk about their ancestors and where your roots are from. So I hope you take as a little assignment that you talk to your mom and your dad, your aunties, your uncles, your nanas, your grandpas, and ask them, where did our family come from? I have a little book here, and you can see it's called The Daily Reminder. And inside, perhaps you can see the year, 1928. This book is 94 years old, and it's special in my heart because it was my great-grandmother's journal. And I would like to read just a little bit about what they wrote about. Belle and Bob and the boys, that's my grandpa and grandma and my dad, were here and we made cookies. The weather was beautiful, but it's going to rain tomorrow, so I won't be able to get my laundry done. That was just one account. Boys and girls, keep a journal, write things down, and when you come back just to read it, it will be so special in your heart to remember these things. This is very special. This was my great-grandma's 94 years old. I love this little book. But talk to your families about the history and come and enjoy your Lake Orion if you haven't been to the village, okay? Have a wonderful rest of your spring and summer. I know you're all anxious to get back to school. We love you very, very much.